The Port of Oakland is a major container ship facility located in Oakland, California, in the San Francisco Bay. It was the first major port on the Pacific coast of the United States to build terminals for container ships. It is now the fifth busiest container port in the United States, behind Long Beach, Los Angeles, Newark, and Savannah. Development of an intermodal container handling system in 2002 culminated over a decade of planning and construction to produce a high-volume cargo facility that positions the Port of Oakland for further expansion of the West Coast freight market share. Originally, the estuary, 500 feet wide, had a depth of 2 feet at mean low tide. In 1852, the year of Oakland's incorporation as a town by the California state legislature, large shipping wharves were constructed along the Oakland estuary, which was dredged to create a viable shipping channel. 22 years later, in 1874, the previously dredged shipping channel was deepened to make Oakland a deep water port. In the late 19th century, the Southern Pacific was granted exclusive rights to the port, a decision the city soon came to regret. In January 1906, a small work party in the employ of the Western Pacific Railroad, which had just begun construction, hastily threw a crossing over the SP line to connect the WP main line with trackage built on an area of landfill. This act, protested by the SP and later upheld in court, broke the railroad's grip on the port area. The courts ruled that all landfill since the date of the agreement did not belong to the SP. This ruling ended SP control and made the modern Port of Oakland possible. On May 6, 1915, the Admiral Dewey became the first vessel to dock at the foot of Clay Street. Captain J. Daniels, master of the vessel, was greeted by Commissioner of Public Works Harry S. Anderson and harbor manager W. W. Keith. The two men who had so much to do with the upbuilding of the city's waterfront were the first aboard the boat. Captain, do you realize that you are the commander of the first big vessel that has ever tied up to what will eventually be the busiest wharf on the Pacific coast? Quote. Anderson asked that official as he shook Captain J. Daniels' hand. I certainly do realize that, Mr. Anderson, returned Captain Daniels, and I assure you that I appreciate the honor. I've been many years on the sea, but I have never docked a ship at a better wharf than this. Source: Oakland Tribune, May 7, 1915. The project in 1921 dug a channel 30 feet deep at mean low water from the bay to Brooklyn Basin, a distance of 4 3/4 miles, and then a channel 25 feet deep around the basin and 18 feet to San Leandro Bay, an added distance of 4 miles. However, the port was not officially named the Port of Oakland until 1927. Under the leadership of the newly organized Board of Port Commissioners, under the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1922, the project produced the channel 30 feet deep and 800 feet wide through the shoal south of Yerba Buena Island, narrowing to 600 feet at the end of the Oakland jetties, widening of the estuary channel to 600 feet to Webster Street, dredging of the South Channel Basin to 30 feet and a turning basin, then 30 feet to Park Street, at a cost to the federal government of $6 million. In 1962, the Port of Oakland began to admit container ships. Container traffic greatly increased the amount of cargo loaded and unloaded in the port. By the late 1960s, the Port of Oakland was the second largest port in the world in container tonnage. However, depth and navigation restrictions in San Francisco Bay limited its capacity, and by the late 1970s it had been supplanted by the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach as the major container port on the West Coast. During an expansion of the port in the late 1960s, fill material was added to what remained of the old Southern Pacific Mole. The fill came largely from the concurrent excavation of the Berkeley Hills Tunnel during the construction of the BART system. The BART trunk line also crosses over part of the port, and the east portal of the Transbay Tube that carries BART trains from Oakland to San Francisco lies within the port. One of the main limitations to growth was the inability to transfer containers to rail lines, all cranes historically operating between ocean vessels and trucks. In the 1980s, the Port of Oakland began the evaluation of development of an intermodal container transfer capability, i.e. facilities that would allow transloading of containers from vessels to either trucks or rail. Modes. The port retained VZM. Corps of Engineering and Earthmetrics to perform engineering and environmental studies to allow detailed engineering to proceed. In 1987, on behalf of the Oakland Port Commission, Alan Broussard led a group of 72 lawyers, port officials including then Port Commissioner Carol Ward Allen, and city officials on a 3-week-long trip to China meeting the mayor of Shanghai, Jiang Zemin.